Hi, this is Wayne Hall back again with comics that you can get locally. There's indie comics in particular. And this week I want to change things a little bit up. I want to do some comics that maybe your local comic shop doesn't have, but a local store might. And that is Walmart. Walmart has books called from Allegiance Comics anyway, and there are four of them right now. They come in the local Walmart, and they are Nora's Saga, The Futurists, Red Rooster, and this one, Bass Reeves. There's a new one coming called The Saints that'll be up as well. Now, this is the one I happen to like the best out of the group. If you go to a Walmart, what you'll see is there'll be like a stand, like what they call an end cap, a thing that usually is on the end of a line. And it has right now four comics, two issues each. This is the second issue, or is it? This is actually the beginning of the series. Bass Reeves happens to be the person upon which the Lone Ranger series is based. And he was a person who worked for the police hunting down criminals. And he was very much of a real person. Interestingly enough, the comic doesn't refer to the Lone Ranger legend, but it's in here. People know this pretty much, and I thought this one is a really good comic. Bass Reeves was a guy of color. He was chosen by like the United States Marshals to be a hunter, not necessarily a bounty hunter, but a hunter of criminals. And this is where he gets the badge right there. Now, the legend is because he was a person of color, they wanted to make him into the Lone Ranger, but they didn't want to make him a person of color, which is why he got the black mask. That's what they say anyway. It's interesting because that's the person on which this comic is based. It's interesting to read. There weren't a lot of people of color in the West during that time. There were some, but very few. And it was interesting that he was able to do the hunting quite a bit. The interesting thing about Bass, and it might be Bass, I don't know how it's pronounced, was that his son actually became a criminal, and he ended up having to go and arrest his own son. And that's part of what's going on in the first issue. We see the business about his son. We get to meet his son and how he was raised. And because he's a marshal and somebody who's extremely scrupulous, things don't go always the easiest. And when he finds out that his son, and by the way, here's a picture of what the Bass Reeves really look like. I find that really interesting about that. And then this is actually something that is a real document that he signed. So he's a real person. Kind of an interesting thing. I love the character. I love the history aspects of the book. I'm sure there's some stretching and pulling to make this fit the comic format. But it was really interesting, especially, February being a Black History Month. I thought this was a great time to talk about this book. And it's really, really well done. Kevin Griveau is the author. It's a French name, I'm sure. But the first episode's called No God West of Fort Smith, and it has to do with the fact that because it's so wild, the West is the Wild West, there's no belief that God is anywhere out there. So, Bass Reeves has to go step in. And he's an excellent shot. He is determined. He never lets somebody get away from him. And so it's a very interesting book. There are actually two of these out right now. This is the first one. And of those four books, this is the one I really like the best. And I highly recommend this if you can get this. I have a strong feeling that these aren't only going to be in Walmart for much longer because they're quite good. And this one is, like I said, my favorite. And I am fascinated by a person of color. I have this thing about people of color in comics. I just think that it's terrible to slap a person of color into an established identity. I think that's a cheat. I think world building or real things can do a much better job of telling those kinds of stories. I mean, Superman, they completely built the whole world around Superman at the start. So why not do that with these characters? And because this is a real person, I just adore this book. I think the art is kind of good, and two, it's a little craggy. David Williams is the name of the artist, and lots of action and some drama as he wrestles with himself, especially when it concerns his son. That's a big deal. When the son goes bad and he has to go after him, that's hard for Bass to do it. So it's a very compelling story. It's a strong character. It's a person of color. It's just a well done book, and I wanted to make an exception for the local shops just this week, so I can talk about this comic because I think this is a great way to kick off the Black History Month. Talking about this person who was the actual inspiration for the Lone Ranger, as I said. Anyway, let's get to the grading here. The writing. The writing is really good. And granted, as I said, there are real things going on and there's real events taking place in this book. But what's interesting is that there's some, I'm sure, pulling and stretching of the facts to make sure that it goes. But it's really well put together and it's very compelling. I love the fact that this book actually came out and this is part of that series from Allegiance. It's a great, great book. I love the writing. It's very compelling. They make no bones about the fact that he's a person of color, and in an era where a person of color was not considered an important part of society, he is because of what he can do. And so I think that's very important. That the writing is really good about that. The art, as I mentioned, is a little craggy. Things are a little hard to understand once in a while. Uh, I like it because it fits the story. I would give it a good B because it's a perfect fit for this kind of story. So I think that a B is good. There are places I would have liked a little different, but that's what I got. Okay, lettering. As I'm always really critical of lettering, I really do think that they do the lettering very well in this book. They're not covering over the art that much. That always drives me insane. So I would give it a good B. There are places where I would have liked it a little differently, but you know, it's okay. So I like that very well. Lettering B. Literary merit. This story takes place in the 1800s, and I think it's still gripping and compelling today. So I would give literary merit an A. I have not seen this story told in any other form before. So for me, I really like that. And so the literary merit for me is just great. An A all the way. I wish this could be used in school classes, especially this month. But let's go on to fun factor. As always, the books that I like, fun factor is never a big deal. There's very little humor in here, and when it's in here, it's a very dark humor. When Bass kind of gives it and quotes Bible to people and stuff like that that he's about to capture. There's this kind of humor. When he's talking to the person and he's about to arrest him, you can see he kind of startles the guy and stuff. And that's a darkish humor. So I would give it a C, maybe. And then overall grade. Because I really love this book and I really want people to do, I would give this at least a B plus, could be an A. If the artwork was a little stronger, I would give this an A, but it's a B plus. And like I said, Walmart is the place to get these books. There's also a website, and let me give you the website is allegiancearts.com. If you can't find the Walmart, you could probably go there and buy it. I haven't seen it in Comixology yet, so it's pretty much right now uniquely a Walmart thing. This is the month when there are going to be more issues of these. There's only been 2 so far. The 3rd issue should be out in February. So if you can get the first 2, you can be up to speed with the rest of it for this month. So this is Bass Reeves. Again, it's Allegiance Comics, which I think you're going to want to look for. It's in the Walmart. I've seen them in these little stands that are what they call end caps on the end of an aisle or something like that. It's separate from other stuff. Although I have seen one Walmart where they put it in with like pops and things like that. So that's the book for this week, and look forward to talking with you soon. But until then, keep reading your comics.